Rural Heritage on RFD TV is brought to you by Rural Heritage Magazine, a bi-monthly magazine featuring articles about farming and logging with draft animal power, small-scale diversified family farming and homesteading, and other aspects of our rich rural heritage. Rural Heritage Magazine, borrowing from yesterday to do the work of today. For subscription information, please call 319-362-3027 or order online at www.ruralheritage.com. Hi, I'm Joe Mishka. Welcome to another episode of Rural Heritage TV. It's fun to drive through the rural countryside and stop and appreciate an old barn by the side of the road. Too often, though, these barns are in a state of disrepair. Isn't it nice if you could have a guide that would show you where to look for barns that have been restored, renovated, or preserved? Well, there's a tour like that available to you, self-guided, in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. It's put out by the Historic Preservation Trust of Lancaster County and the Historical Society of the Cocalico Valley. It's called the Lancaster Barn Tour. The book will show you where to find these barns as you head out on your search. It's an exterior-only tour, and the barns are easily viewed from public roads. We stopped by a few months ago to visit a few of them on Farmingdale Road in Lancaster, and the owners gave us a private tour.
All right, so what you see here is a stone house built by Swiss immigrants. They were the founding family here. Their name was Brubaker, and they immigrated from Switzerland in 1707 into Philadelphia, and a couple generations later they found their way here to Lancaster County, and two brothers and a first cousin were given Penn land grants in 1760. This is one of three homes in the surrounding area that were built by those settlers. And I've also asked local historians about the date of the barn, and all I can be told is, it was built around the time of the house, but it can't really be dated for certain. Sometimes historians speculate the barn was the most important thing to have a place to put the crops and so forth, and the house came second. The barn, the barn goes back to probably around 1800 or so. But what's unique about this barn is you're going to see a total combination of new versus old. All the masonry is original, and pretty much everything else was rebuilt in 2014 to the same dimensions of the original barn, but the original barn was in really bad shape. We thought the best thing to do would be to preserve the masonry component and build a new barn on the same footprint to the same dimensions. So you'll see a standing seam metal roof, and then we actually have thermal hot water panels on the barn roof, so they produce hot water which is pumped down to the house and helps heat the house. So, not being farmers, when we decided to renovate the barn, we hired a company local here to Lancaster County, an Amish company that does a lot of southern end of the county, horse barns and so forth. And so they took down the old barn in about 48 hours and then built this new barn in about 3 weeks. The crane was only here for one day because they pre-assembled a lot of the framing. And all the framing is hemlock harvested from Maine.
Wow.
Then the ceiling, of course, is pine. And the floor was the last thing in. And this is 5/4 inch tongue and groove oak, which really gives it a very solid feel.
Absolutely.
And
a tight fit.
so right now, we just use it for social events. My wife and I are members of certain nonprofits, so we've had fundraisers, and we're both fans of live music, so we built a stage and have some invite-only events. And
It's got a kind of a clean, sophisticated, but simple feel to it.
Yeah, it is, and the lines are nice, and
Right.
again, it's a really nice combination of old and new.
Exactly.
The loft really serves no purpose other than the builder said, how about a loft? It'll look good there. So we agreed to that. And we have a couple bay doors, which of course we don't use, but they're good. They're good for additional ventilation
Sure.
in the summer. And you know, it helps the view.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely.
So this is the overhang.
Okay, all right.
Which is good for storage. Now, this overhang was initially cantilevered off of beams in the basement,
Okay.
but they were pretty rotted, so we went with building columns outside to support that. And we actually found some columns on a traditional Swiss barn like this in Chester County.
The timber framing matches what it had been, pretty much, as far as you know? Hard to tell.
Yeah, it's hard to tell because the old frame had been scalped for pieces
Sure.
over the years and had definitely weakened it. And this northeast corner was sagging a couple feet.
Oh, really?
here,
Okay.
And the integrity of the barn had really been compromised over the years, and all the floorboards were curled up and big gaps between. And we had looked at trying to support the old framing, but it just wasn't worth it. And aesthetically, you would have been putting metal framing all around it.
Right. I mean, you really saved the barn by kind of rebuilding the skeleton
That's
inside.
correct.
Yeah.
And there's some interesting things to point out in the basement. This is the old barn.
Okay.
Here.
Yeah.
And this shows you how the barn was removed.
Wow.
So the whole barn's gone there.
Yeah.
That's facing out there,
Okay.
looking in.
Right.
Okay. And then this is from the pond. You're back to the pond looking at the back of the barn.
I see.
And then the framing began. You can see the crane coming through the trees
Right.
there.
Right.
And just now this roof's going up.
Boy.
And there's these walls up. And there's right before the siding started to go up.
That's terrific.
Yeah. You know, one thing that was pointed out to me was, you know, I didn't really notice this, but when you look at the limestone right about at the top of that door, you
Right.
see how it goes from blue to grayish?
Right.
So it looks like maybe
There was
at
an
one time
addition.
they went higher.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
And you know, they added that there.
Right.
So initially the barn was not near as high as it was.
Sure. There's the
So there wasn't access between the lower level and the upper level?
Sure.
You had to go out and walk around?
Really, there wasn't a ladder or a stair?
No, there
As far as you know,
wasn't.
okay, huh.
We put
Sure.
this in using some old, you know, using scraps and
Right, it fits nicely.
some old pieces. But you'll look at these summer beams, they're pretty impressive. Oops.
Oh yeah, they're huge.
Yeah.
They're doing a lot
But
of work.
there's some nice things like just like the 45s here, you know,
Yep.
they didn't have to do that.
Right.
Just some things that go along. And then we added a bathroom because of the events we have.
Sure.
And we did use some older timbers here.
Right, I see that, yeah.
That were still in good shape.
These are hewn.
Yeah.
You can see the hew marks on them.
We discovered some interesting artwork by somebody who was doing a concrete repair, and he wanted to sketch their wife or models, but it looks like it's probably like 1880, 1890-ish, based on the headwear. You can see the frame was changed.
Right.
It used to sit on these concrete pads, and they cut new foundations.
Right.
Because they wanted to spread the load out some more.
Sure. Was there, this isn't a chimney, or is it?
No, it's not.
It's a brick post.
Yeah, just a brick column there,
Okay.
center column.
Huh, okay. It's the only brick.
Yeah, it is.
Interesting.
And I think there were some other, like there, it looks like it was an old access door, or, I think the elevations changed on that east side of the barn, and the columns that used to go in here, you can see where they've been like patched up.
Yep.
There, they were completely rotted. They as a matter of fact, they weren't even attached anymore, and there were lolly columns here,
Okay.
supporting the barn. This corner is the one that was really saggy.
Sure, okay.
So to support that outside, they put this angle iron in, and took away the cantilever component. But we used a lot of the old timbers here too.
Yeah, that's
Almost
great.
exclusively.
That's terrific.
And these are, I don't know how original the doors are, but I think they're original. I've seen, Swiss barns, and this is just right to the T.
Right, right, yep,
Design.
yep, exactly. Well, it's definitely hand-forged hardware.
Yeah.
That's terrific.
Wait to go into the house.
Okay.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's some pretty cool stuff. So that's a smokehouse, because most people say, oh, a spring house, but it's a smokehouse.
Sure.
Because the spring is in the basement,
Okay,
and the location of the spring is what dictated the location of the house.
I see.
These landscape, big limestone rocks were taken out of it. We put the pond in 2014 as well.
We now have 4 volumes of America's Rural Yesterday books with photos of farm life 100 years ago. Fieldwork has images of horses in the fields working the ground, planting and harvesting the crop. Barn and Farmyard shows farmers putting that crop in the barn, silo, or corn crib and caring for poultry, hogs, cattle, and more. In At Home and in Town, farm families prepare Sunday dinner, relax in the parlor, drive to town by buggy or wagon, and visit the general store. Finally, Early Tractors has over 250 photos of early American tractors like Alice Chalmers, Oliver, John Deere, Farmall, Minneapolis Moline, and many more. These photos are of new tractors back in the day and show how they were configured coming out of the factory. Buy any of these books for $24.95 plus shipping. When you buy 2 or more, the price per book goes down, all the way to $17.49 per book when you buy all 4. To order, just call 1-877-647-2452 or order online at www.ruralheritage.com. That's 877-647-2452.
The barn was built in 1910.
Oh, really?
Over top
Okay.
of they tore down the smaller barn and built one a little bit bigger.
I see. This is the barn that's on the tour? The barn
Yes,
tour? Okay.
it is, yes.
All right. And it has been used for a variety of purposes, probably? Dairy?
Well, yeah, it was dairy back in Marlin's time and before that. And then they had steers. And in my time, since the early 50s, we had cattle in the wintertime.
Okay.
And then we stored, of course, straw and hay, raised wheat, stored that here.
Okay.
And had tobacco in part of the barn.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you hang tobacco up high?
Up higher, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Most of
What
it
you
was
didn't
stored
fit in
in the
here?
tobacco shed. What
Okay.
didn't fit in here,
Okay.
we used there.
All right. It's a granary here?
Granary, bank of rails,
Yeah.
post and beam construction, all chestnut wood. Yeah, if you could get some of the superstructure
Oh, it's a beauty.
And some of the heavy ropes that you see to your left here, they would have been used to pull loose hay.
Yeah, so you have a track and trolley system up above?
Yes,
And so it would run down to a pulley and a team would pull it out here?
yes. The early part, it was a Brubaker family, started it, Peter and, well, actually it was a Jacob Brubaker, had it back at beginning in 1717. And then when he passed away, he passed it on to his sons, Jacob and Peter.
Okay.
And then Peter sold this farm back to his nephew because his brother lived next door here at the barn, I guess where you just were.
Yeah.
One of his sons had the whole property because Peter had one son, but he moved to Ohio, and actually his son died before Peter did. So he sold it back. It's still in the same family, and then one of his sons, Abraham, bought this property. They divided it, or he bought this section of it, and then they had a daughter, Elizabeth, who married Tobias Miller around 1830.
Okay.
And then one of his sons, Abraham, had 18 children here. And one of them, Isaac, took over the farm, I think around 1905. And he was my grandfather, and then my dad took it over in the early 40s.
I see.
And then our parents passed away here in the early 2000s. So Marlon and I have the farm since then.
And so you put up tobacco until recently?
I think around 83 was the last year,
Okay.
83 or
Okay.
84. We used to raise celery too, but that
Did you?
we had about 4 acres of celery. But we didn't really process that here on this barn, but it was on this farm.
I don't remember much about the dairy because I think Dad got rid of the cows. He didn't like milking, and they were milking 15, 20 cows by hand, him and Mother and the hired hand. So they finally sold the cows and jackhammered the stanchions out and made pens for beef cattle.
Okay.
And some pigs too, part of the time.
So you'd farrow pigs?
Yeah.
And then these rails here where we'd hang the tobacco. And actually our grandfather he was hanging up tobacco and a rail broke and he fell and hit his head and passed away the next day.
Oh my.
So my oldest uncle was about 21 and my father was the youngest at 5 years of age, so he doesn't remember too much of his father.
So you hanged it in here, but you also hanged it in the main
In the bigger
as well.
part, yes, well, you saw those
30
rails,
acres, straight out.
30 acres.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's a lot of tobacco, right?
it is.
Yeah.
Yes. We used to farm about 5 in our lifetime.
There wasn't enough of room to raise 30 acres of tobacco in these two buildings. So there were some energetic folks from Rohrstown, men that wanted to earn some extra money, so they would raise some tobacco here on what they call the halves.
Okay.
They'd help with the labor, but they didn't own the land, and help to harvest it, hang it, strip it, and then the landowner would get half the proceeds, and the other fellow would get the other half of the proceeds. And some of that tobacco got taken out there because in a lot of the houses there was a small shed behind the house where they would stable a horse or two, but they had scaffolding where they could hang a couple hundred lath of tobacco. The original barn had stone gable ends, and they tore the gable ends down, and a lot of those stones were buried in different gullies around the farm.
For Phil. Okay.
For Phil.
Did you have horses?
Mules,
Mules, okay.
and if you go back prior to automobiles, horses, because the garage that you'll see over there held carriages in its day. That's why it was built. One end was a little chicken coop, the other end you could put 3 or 4 carriages in.
Did y'all work mules when you were kids on tobacco?
Vaguely remember riding a mule when the hired man cultivated tobacco to get me out of the house when I was 3, 4, 5 years old.
Yeah. Bank barn. Yeah. I mean, this qualifies as a bank barn, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, you can drive in from the back, just
There's an
about.
acquaintance that has a bunch of bikes here that he repairs. This is his inventory.
Okay.
So,
Bicycles, okay.
bicycles. yeah.
Bicycles. There's 2 planters here. The one with the medium-sized barrel, that's a tobacco, 2-row tobacco planter, and then the one with the 55-gallon drum that has a seat on is a 1-row planter.
We used that to plant celery,
Okay,
because that's planted a lot closer on the road than tobacco.
I see.
So you'd have 2 people each alternating to plant.
Celery plants are only planted about 6, 7 inches apart, whereas tobacco is like 15, 16 inches. And then we had the bullpen here, where we used to have a bull many years ago.
But here is the what is called the dampening cellar. And, it was like maybe 4 holes along here, and then you would hand it down. And
Dad would be in the rails up here, and maybe you or Mother would be down on the floor catching the laths 2 at a time.
Yeah.
And I'd be down here with this opening open and hanging them up. That'd be enough to keep you stripping the leaves for, I don't know, a week or so. For sure.
And then you'd have to wait for damp weather.
Then you'd have to
Oh,
wait
it
for
gets
damp weather again, be
again.
looking at the weather.
And then this is a
Original
barn.
barn with the stone gable ends, and it looks like there's a corn barn separate from that.
Yeah. And that was a painting probably off of that
And
photo.
here you can see some of the original outbuildings and maybe just the corner of the summer house. Well, here's a better picture of
Yeah,
it.
actually, that's the original picture.
Yep, yep.
So,
So here's where you can see the summer house where the bake oven would have been enclosed.
We'll be showing you more of the barns on the Lancaster Barn Tour in upcoming episodes. In the meantime, to get a copy of the Barn Tour book, visit hptrust.org and click on the Barn Tour link. This program is available for purchase. To order your copy, please call 319-362-3027 or visit www.ruralheritage.com. Rural Heritage is a bi-monthly magazine dedicated to draft animal farming and logging, as well as other aspects of our rich rural heritage. It is published by Mishka Press, which also offers a complete line of Back to the Land books, DVDs, and calendars. Call or write for a catalog or subscription information, or visit our website at www.ruralheritage.com.